JC Knight here. Everybody knows me. I'm a retired Marine gunner, arms dealer.
I'm Bill Bodette. I'm a retired United States Marine Corps First Sergeant.
You know, we're making our rounds today, shooting a pile of shows. Seabass is going to put out for us. Always get aggravated, and people always want to talk about, well, man, that's really high speed, and I don't think people understand whether it's the lowest man on the totem pole of the National Guard to a Tier 1 asset.
Right.
The last 100 yards of going to kill a bad guy or to take down an enemy, there's nothing high speed about it. It's about doing simple things well, repetition, and practice.
Absolutely. You know, there ain't nothing. You know, a lot of times being high speed and all that is fine. It's great. I get it. But I'm going to tell you right now, when bullets are flying at you, for example, what makes you a good marksman is not how good you can shoot a rifle, right? What really makes you a marksman is how good you can shoot while somebody's shooting back at you. And that takes discipline and training. There ain't no high speed there. That's just doing your goddamn job through discipline and training, I think.
And, you know, it's building trust in the weapon. I remember when I was in a unit as a battalion gunner, Marines reached out to me and they're like, hey, gunner, we just scored some helos. We want to go do aerial sniping. When was the last time you did known distance? When was the last time you did unknown distance with your sniper rifles? Right. Making sure that that's dialed in. So when you're at your worst, you're scared, your heart rate's up, bullets are flying, that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm gonna pull that trigger with a well-aimed shot, and I'm gonna put that bullet where it needs to be. And you can't skip steps in doing simple things and falling in love with something because you think it looks sexy. Right. Doesn't mean that going home alive and sitting at a bar, such as the fine place we're at right now, Brooksy's over here in Winfield, West Virginia. Cheers to Jeremy for having us. I want to be home to do that. That's sexy. That's cool. And the only way you get there is by doing simple things well. And to be quite honest, I learned that from my early days in the Corps. And you had a hand in that.
Yeah, when I was your SOI instructor. Absolutely. Listen, I figured this out a long time ago. If you do things right, and you really believe in what you're doing, believe it or not, it'll get easier. If you make shortcuts and you try to make things easier, you take the easy road, I find out, guess what? Life gets miserable for you. You listen, I have this saying, when it rains on me, good, I'm happy. Let it rain, let it pour on me. Because you know what? It's raining on my enemies too. And I welcome it. And I guarantee it, they don't.
It's the challenges that grow you, makes you stronger, makes you harder. You've got to go through those things. And I remember, learning from you as an infantry instructor when I was a private, your attention to detail and your ability to drive home the simpler things, that stuck with me. And I remember, right. We'll sit over at your house as you drink out of your USS Incheon coffee cup. And hey, watch it now. I know that's a relic, and I'm dating you here. I'm dating Bill Bodette.
I was with the 24th MEU.
But
I'm a corporal.
And while with the 24th MEU, you were recognized by the commander of the 6th Fleet with a certificate of appreciation for how awesome you were.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, Bo here, which is pretty unheard of in the Marine Corps, took a platoon on a deployment as an E5 sergeant. And there were probably 50 0369 platoon sergeants in that unit. I don't know what the number.
Sergeants.
Yeah, staff sergeants. And because you did simple things well and your leadership was good, you were like on paper, not filling in. You left and got on that boat out of Norfolk, and you were a platoon sergeant.
As a sergeant, I had my own platoon. Sure did. Because I just did things right. My convictions told me to do it. I was convicted to be the best infantryman that I could be and to make my platoon the best infantryman they could be. And how I did that was just the basics. We did the basics so goddamn good. Listen, right down to fire movement, fire maneuver, right down to marksmanship, right down to everything. We did the basics so well that nobody could stop us. I don't give a who you were. You come up with all this other high speed you want. Throw it at me. And I guarantee it, I'll take a platoon of young 18, 19-year-old Marines that are trained properly and just doing the basics, and we'll kick you right off this planet.
I look back to our early times, especially after we left the drill field. We end up
Oh, God. Let's not talk about drill field.
We're not going to talk about the drill field. We're going to skip over that one. There's plenty of funny jackasses.
I ain't going to jail today. I ain't going to jail.
But we talk about landing in Afghanistan. And later on, I was an SOI instructor. And it was the simple things. It was the simple things, the continuing actions,
right?
Laying your machine guns right, zeroing your rifle, zeroing your machine gun the right way,
and doing that before you even left for deployment. You made sure that your Marines already had their zeroed, and you re-zeroed them when they got in country, didn't you?
We did,
absolutely.
And I remember we inherited a unit that was ate up with hazing, distrust, and bad leadership. The Marines did not trust anybody.
Especially staff and COs,
Yeah, especially June. They hated staff and COs. Like, here comes another one of these company
because
assholes.
Right.
But we were really quick to say, okay, I'm going to PT with you. I'm going to get in gunfights with you. I'm going to help you build the defense. We're going to do this together.
Absolutely. I said, I guarantee it. You go in a cave or you go in a building, I'll be the first one in and the last one out. I promise you that. And I held true to that. And you did too. We went on the patrols with the Marines. We didn't hide. We didn't do any of that. We were willing to take a bullet just like they were.
Amen. And
we did. Hell, I did.
And I remember inheriting my platoon. I had guys that had been in the brig, guys that had been in trouble. And I said, hey, listen.
You know what they needed? Let me cut you off. You know what they just needed? Leadership. That's all they needed was true leadership.
And I remember talking to them and I said, hey, check it out, man. I can tell there's no trust here right now. Right. But know this, if we get in an attack and we got to do a hard left, a hard right, and close with and destroy, and you're the first man in the stack and you're my busted private that just got out of the brig and I'm stacked behind you, guess what? You're the first man in the stack. You're in control of the stack.
That's it. You're in charge.
And even though I'm the platoon sergeant,
that's right.
We've got to have that trust, brother.
That's right. Even when I was a company gunny and I'd go on patrol with a squad or whatever, I'd tell the squad leader, the corporal, guess what? This is your patrol. This is your squad, right? Because I trust you. I know you're going to do the right thing.
Right. And it's not like, you learn a little bit through osmosis, but you really learn through simple things. Like as a machine gunner building a range card, we inherited that camp, and it was a pile of God. It was the worst. It was the worst defense I'd ever been in
Nagalam. They remember the
Claymores.
The Claymores. Yeah, the Claymores had the wires chopped that were the rats through them. Right. Remember that? Yeah. They had no fields of fire. And they didn't lay the guns right. Their defense was all jacked up. And no sandbags, nothing.
And I remember us taking the time, just like we taught it at the School of Infantry. We laid our machine guns on every avenue of approach.
Absolutely.
And then what we did was one of us would get up on the roof with a radio and we'd send a squad leader out, walk towards the camp. Okay, what's your pace count? I'm 200 meters out. Okay, continue to walk. Okay, I lost you for 30 meters of dead space.
Yep.
We mark that.
Mark it,
we lay either a 40 millimeter on it if it's close enough, or we lay a mortar on it. Yep. And we did that. We redid all the claymores that were chewed in half by goats because guess what? Guess what didn't happen? Keyword BAM says, what's the most important step? Supervise. Nobody supervised the laying of the claymores. Nobody supervised how the defense was set up.
Let me tell them what dead space
or
is
maintained.
Tell them what dead space is first, because you're talking about dead space. There might be people out there that don't know what dead space is.
Something that cannot be fired by a direct fire weapon.
It can't be hit by a direct fire weapon. You got to do a mortar or something like that.
An example would be somebody jumps down in a ditch. I can no longer shoot them.
And they think they're safe, okay? They get down in this ditch or whatever. They think they're safe because they're not in direct fire. But then we're hitting them with indirect fire because we already have it marked. That's what he's talking about.
So we get in there. We use our experience of building range cards as a machine gunner. Never build a base defense fire plan. But guess what? If you can do it for a machine gun, you can do it for a pile of machine guns, mortars, rifles, everything. So our battalion commander shows up, and I've got a bunch of Marines that are still trying to learn to trust. Right. And they get up, and that battalion commander walks in, and he's got a platoon sergeant briefing him. And I show him our defense.
And that don't happen, okay? A platoon sergeant don't brief a battalion commander, usually. But JC had the whole camp wired so tight, you couldn't pound a toothpick up a fucking asshole with it.
No, it was good.
That's how tight it was.
It was good. And he showed that, and that built trust. And what did it do to our Marines? It inspired confidence in them that, hey, not only are these guys going to fight with me, they halfway know what they're doing.
You remember what I just said? If you do things right, life becomes easier.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened.
Yep. And it's doing the simple things well and maintaining it. And then it's okay. We're getting ready to go out on patrol. Our best friends were machine guns. There is no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
And it was prepping the ammo cans. It was getting all the little stuff out of the can. So I've got
that's all a continuing action.
It's a continuing action, and the continuing actions matter. And I tell you, there's a lot of guys that would assume, you know, I'm not going to reference the drill field, but just one more time. Marines think, okay, my platoon sergeant just came off the drill field. This guy's an asshole.
Yeah, that's what they thought.
And he's gonna treat me bad. But, you know, in the middle of the night when I have to piss, instead of like walking to a post to yell at a kid and make sure he's awake, I walk down there with a cold Gatorade. When was the last time you changed the batteries on your night vision?
Right.
When was the last time you lifted the feed tray on that machine gun to clean it? I think it's been about 24 hours. Well, hey, we just had birds land. Let's clean that feed tray again. Right. Let's check our ammo. And then all of a sudden you walk off that post and that kid's like, that gunny or that staff sergeant is here for me. He's on my side.
Right.
You know? And that translates. I remember Bo was in a fight and we knew where they were going and they were barely in range of 50 cals. And I had 2 50 cals oriented in the direction he was on patrol. Lo and behold, Bill Bodette, the bad guys like him, they start shooting. Me and the best machine gunner in the 2nd Marine Division.
Oh, yeah, Sean
Christ jumped on 2 50 cals. And while the bad guys were 2 clicks away, which is 200 meters outside of the max effective range of a 50 cal, we had those T&Es cranked, and we were plunging onto the enemy position. And we could see the splash where those 50 cal rounds were hitting, and it helped Bo and his guys to be able to maneuver against the enemy and get out of the kill zone of the ambush. So it's just doing the simple little things, you know, getting prepped, continuing actions, you know,
always making sure you have water, making sure your rifle or your machine gun's clean and ready to go, making sure that you're fed, you know, making sure you're drinking water, making sure every little thing is right. That's a continuing action. That's why they call it continuing action, because it always needs to happen.
And I remember, you know, people will talk about, you know, every guy counts, and you have to make everybody feel like they're part of the team.
Every rank and every position is important. None is more important than any other. I don't give a what you say. I don't care if you're a battalion commander or Ricky Rude in the rear rank with the rusty rifle. You are just as important.
When we would get our camp attacked, I even had a fighting position for our cook.
Hey, and he fought too.
And he fought, and he took it serious.
Hell yeah, he did.
I would go to his position. I'm like Tubbs, where's your left and right?
He was a Marine. He was a Marine cook.
He said, Staff Sergeant, I got my left here, my right here. I got dead space out to here. Okay, sounds good. What happens if you got to reinforce? Where do you go? He goes, I go over and I help with that machine gun. I said, you're exactly right.
And you know what? I guarantee, and he felt important because he was. And you made him feel important. You made him feel like a Marine. He wasn't a cook. He was a Marine. You know, our camp got attacked. He knew right what to do. He grabbed his rifle, went in his position, and he killed bad guys.
And you know, we had another guy. I'm not going to drop his name on here, but complete jackass. And he would always talk about, well, I haven't been in a fight yet. Well, it's like, tomorrow you're going into the Korengal Valley, and there is a solid chance that you're going to get in a fight.
And he did too.
And he did. And
tell him what he looked like after the firefight.
Buddy, he had soot all over his face. He was tired. He looked broken. He looked at me and Bo, and he said, I don't ever want to get shot at again. I said, well, you just got 8 hours of it in one fell swoop. So
right.
God bless you. And he went up there and he kicked ass. And nobody gave this kid a chance.
Yeah.
But I made him a fire team leader. I gave him a chance to
lead.
Listen,
he was no pussy, man.
If you treat a Marine like a winner, it generally becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Bottom line, Marines, and I'm sure soldiers, they just want to be treated like Marines and soldiers. Bottom line. They're not they don't work for us. We work for them. Bottom line, And if you make them feel important, God damn it, they're gonna be important.
And if
they're gonna act important.
And if you do this job right, and I've heard guys say this, I would much rather be the dude that smiles down the flagpole and it than be the other way around.
That's a fact.
And I have a very rich life, and I'm alive because of that. There are a lot of men of all walks of life, particularly in our walk of life, that don't do that. They're worse off for it, and their Marines and soldiers are probably worse off.
Well, they'll bring a little humor into it. I'm alive because of the Muslim marksmanship program. Because they suck. Thank God. Go ahead, JC.
I remember Bill Bodette.
They only got me once. Lucky bastards.
I remember you said you were getting shot at one time, and you had a guy that hid behind a rock about the size of this bottle of moonshine.
Buddy, I seen it. Listen. We were taking fire in this one ambush, and we got our head count after we got out of the ambush, and we realized he wasn't with us, so we went back for him. And he was still fighting, and he was taking cover behind a rock about this big, and he was sitting behind it. Hey, buddy, I'm gonna tell you, I seen some.
So I guess my 2 cents with all this, and the reason we start talking about being high speed is do simple things well. Don't skip steps.
Continuing actions.
Continuing actions, and it all starts with zeroing the damn service rifle. Do the simple things well with your weapons, and if you're going to have a kid carry it, he has to know how to use it.
That's right.
Because we see a lot of times units will say, "Hey, we're going to have you carry this PFC Bodette," and he don't know how to use it.
Let me tell you something. I remember when the new Marine checked into the unit, he got the saw and he got the comm gear. He had to carry all this because he's brand new. Didn't know how to use any of it. And that was weak-ass leadership. They made him carry it just because it was heavy. Now that's and that's weak as And I stopped that as soon as I became a fucking staff NCO.
And I'll remember in combat, one of my best Marines was Bill Fairfield, and I would not let him be anything other than an RTO.
Buddy, he was good at
because he
it.
was so
under fire too.
Under fire,
he was so calm on the radio.
Calm.
Yeah. He was the best radio man I've ever seen in my life.
And he kept guys alive. There's no doubt in my mind.
Right, because no screaming, no yelling, no freaking out. The only time I heard him on the radio when I knew shit was so bad that it affected him was when Wally got hit.
Yeah. When
he called and I was on the radio with him and I heard he was being real professional, and then I heard him say, "Man, we're just really up down here." And I said, "Fuck, we're on our way." And that was a bad day there. We'll talk about that some other time. But
but I will say this, and since we're talking about a specific Marine, we talk about doing simple things well and putting yourself out there for your Marines. Again, smiling. This could apply to any walk of life. Smiling down the pole and up it. I'll never forget. He was one of my guys that was treated bad, led poorly. Actually did brig time because he tried to cover up some stuff for some senior guys that were hazing guys.
Right.
And I remember he went in our tenor in that company, he went from private to corporal. I remember his last day in the Marine Corps. He had his Charlies on and was throwing his sea bag in his truck. Achievement medal, combat action, combat decorated.
Badass.
Proud to have been a Marine, proud to have served.
And
a warrior. And we, I look back and the lesson you try to provide.
Listen, and I guarantee
it comes back.
He's going to have a successful life too. I will guarantee that.
Great dude.
I will guarantee it. Now, he could have went either way. Under leadership like he had, he wouldn't have done that his last day in the Marine Corps. He wouldn't even have his uniform on. I guarantee it. You totally changed his life.
I remember
by doing the right thing.
I remember we talk about the Iraq or the Afghan marksmanship program. I remember being on a Humvee with Bill and Cannon Cargyle. And Bill's up there running the radio, and me and the gunner look over to the front of the truck because we're one of the soft skin Humvees. And we're like, "Bill, are you still alive?" He goes, "Sure am, Staff Sergeant," because that's how he sounded. And gunner goes, "Give me that handset."
Oh.
I hand the gunner the handset. He passes through the vehicle. I'm like, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "I'm going to check on the gunny."
Listen, we were about 200 meters away, and we just been shot, but we fought the bad guys off. And Gunner Cargyle, earlier that day, I said, "Hey, Gunner, I wish I had a beer right now." He said, "Not me, Gunny. I'm an alcoholic. I don't drink anymore." I said, "Why not, sir?" He said, "Well, one of the reasons, I used to say stupid time. Like, I used to tell my wife the same joke every day when I was drunk." I said, "What was that?" He said, "You know how to catch a unique rabbit?" And I said, "How, sir?" And he said, "You sneak up on it." And he laughed his ass off. Well, anyway, after that fight, what JC's talking about, I hear this radio crackling, and I'm calling over there. They're calling over to us, see if anybody's alive, getting this ACE report, ammo casualty and equipment report. And this is after like a 45-minute firefight. And I hear the radio crackling, and all of a sudden it says, "Do you know how to catch a unique rabbit?" And I threw the headset down. Everybody said, "Man, are they okay? Are they okay?" I said, "Yeah, they're fine. The gunner's telling jokes over the goddamn radio."
He said, "Unique up on him." And, buddy, he started cracking up beside of me, and I don't think I've ever seen him that happy. He was laughing.
We were alive. That's another story. We'll tell how that firefight happened.
And, you talk about setting the example for guys. And then, again, you'll hear me talk about a gunner. I'm a retired gunner. Our gunner.
At the time you were a staff sergeant.
At the time I was a staff sergeant. Our gunner had to leave the next morning to catch a flight out at about 5 in the morning.
He didn't want to go.
He
wanted to stay with us.
And the next morning I wake up. We had about 2 hours of sleep. And I wake up, and he's out there with a cup of coffee cleaning the machine gun he shot before he left. And all the Marines
Set the
saw.
example.
And I looked at the Marines and I looked at the gunner. I said, "Hey, sir, I'll have the boys clean that machine gun." He goes, "I dirtied it. I'll clean it."
That's right.
And
the boys seen that.
And because we did simple things well, and I will to this day, Cannon was a big influence on both of us. And I remember
absolutely.
he said, "If you two ever need anything from me,"
and I believe that to this day.
He says, "I've got your back," and to the point he calls us regularly.
Yeah, he called me the other day. And we were in that firefight 20 years ago, was it?
And I guess
20 years ago.
I guess to close all this down and bring this one to a close, I think you've got to be available, you've got to be approachable, and you got to show through your example that you're there for your Marines through thick and thin.
And on the other side, you got to be teachable. All right, you got to have your own level of maturity to understand that you're not perfect. You know, the second you become let me take that back. The second you stop becoming a student of your profession is the day you've missed the mark, and it's time for you to go.
It's time to go.
Time to go.
Hey, it's JC and Bo. Hey, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you guys. Semper Fi.
Out here.